Welcome everybody. This Lunch and Learn is all about the arts and the world of photography. I'm delighted to introduce Loni Efron, who is the owner, creative director, and curator of Ilon Art Gallery in Harlem in the city. She's collaborated for decades with the icons of the art world. A little name dropping: Annie Leibovitz, Keith Richards, Mark Seliger, David LaChapelle. The list is longer, but those are the only ones I remember. And she has moved her exhibitions online and recently added painters, graffiti artists, and street artists to her portfolio. And there we have it, Loni Efron. I'm gonna.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here and chat. I'll put you on the Brady Bunch view for now so I could see everybody. Thanks for the introduction. And I'm sitting here in my gallery in Harlem. But as Judy said, I had to, for now, not be open because of COVID. I'm excited, though, this summer that it looks like I might be able to open the doors again. In the meantime, I went online, and it's kind of been exciting and brought me to a new way of operating the gallery. But I prepared a presentation to tell you a little bit about my background and show you some pictures. And then, you know, kind of get into the art of the photograph and photography as art. Okay, so we want to. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. One more little tweak on my screen. Okay, so I'm starting here with my contact information. If anybody wants I'll flash this again at the end of the presentation. But here's how to contact me, my websites, and then at the bottom, my Instagram. So I'd be happy if everyone would like to follow me as well. And I see actually there's a typo in archivist, the Loni _ the archivist, THEARCHIVIST. Okay. So I started out my career, I worked for Annie Leibovitz. I was her black and white printer. This is like I feel like one of her iconic images. I love to show this one off. It's the first picture that I actually ever collected myself as well. And I think it started off into this whole world of collecting photography, into the world of fine art photography. But I started out with Annie as her printer. And I love this picture of O.J. Simpson because one of my biggest jobs for her was she photographed his trial, and I got to spend 3 full days in the studio printing the trial. So this was one of my pictures, and you could see OJ knows Annie, and he's glaring back at her, taking these photos of him during his trial. And here's a photo. So after I started printing for Annie, I got to start working in her archives as well. And when I started her archives, it was fairly unorganized. And so I got to reorganize it, put it in order. And again, that sort of started my other part of my career as being an archivist.
Jesus Christ.
Here's some of Annie's like exceptional images that these are what's in all those boxes. I felt like I had to show you a few things of what's in there. So after working with Annie, I luckily got to start working with other artists.
I don't know why I lost it. I'm in here.
Oh, no, don't go on me. I'm going to go on.
I'm not going on you.
And so the next photographer
I had it on here.
Can you mute
And
yourself?
it disappeared. Huh.
Hello. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so so then I started working with David LaChapelle, and that's and I got to organize his archives. And here's another picture into his archives and how other photographers' archives looks. And we organized similar but different. And then this was luckily the first book that I got to start collaborating with artists. Here I kind of just was his archivist and production. And here's a classic picture of David LaChapelle's. This photograph he did for a job. It was Comme des Garçons fashion for Vogue, but it also since is a fine art image that he is in very limited editions and very sought after. Here's another photograph of David's. He's always pushing the limit. This was actually an ad for a diamond campaign, and this was his commercial advertising campaign. Then I started working with Mark Seliger, and on this, I also started through his archives. I took out the picture, but Mark and I after I set up Mark's archive, he wanted to pursue more of an artistic career, not just a commercial career. So he asked me if I could help him tour his work around and figure out how to do shows. And at the time he was working on this series called In My Stairwell, which is a really beautiful series. And they were platinum prints. And that was how we started to work in his, with his photographs. These ones are also platinum. They're not part of that Stairwell series, but these are part of Mark's archive and his images. And so this was Mark and I, Mark's imitating Keith, this was our first show in Europe, promoting his work, and we toured about 10 cities after. This was Brussels. We went to Paris and Amsterdam, and we got it to Japan, we got to Australia. And so it was a fun tour, and it was this body of work. First it was platinums, which is what this show is, and it morphed into that In My Stairwell show, which was all platinums of that series of work. And then Keith Richards' office called up Mark one day after he photographed him and said, we really need some help as an archivist with archiving. And so they recommended me, and 20 years later, I'm still working with Keith. This is actually a photograph of Mark took for Keith's most recent album. So these are Keith's boxes. So even though Keith's a rock and roll star, he has a giant archives. And all these boxes here on the top are all different photo shoots and all different concerts by all different photographers. It's all in the computer, but we also like to come back here and know what we need to know. So we have these labels on the boxes. And then the highlight with Keith was I was able to be the photo editor for his autobiography, Life. Also, when I work with artists, what I do is I help them, put their pictures out there, but I also, before we get to do that, we have to organize their work. So one of my claims to fame is creating these database solutions. And here's just the main screen of Stephen Klein's. And then here's a smaller version, but an inside page for Ruben Natal San Miguel, another photographer. And basically it gives you all the information you need to know about your work and where it is and where it's exhibited. And it could spit documents out for you, and important ones at that. Like this one's a certificate of authenticity. And then the artist could sign it. And this is like saying that this work is authentically by Stephen Klein. It's of Patti Smith. It's this size, it's this edition, and all of that. And then these numbers are really important because they legitimize the work and keep it authentic. Again, David prints his labels. He lives in Hawaii. His studio is in Los Angeles, and makes the pictures in New York. So coordinating him signing them is difficult at times. So we print labels out of the database. We make offers and things like that out of the database with documents like this. And so as Judy said, during this, I think my slides got slightly out of order, but so here's, during this quarantine and COVID, I started, reaching out with these street artists that I've always loved, I've always wanted to do project with, and we finally got to start collaborating. This is LaCroix Eyebrows. He was my first street artist to join me on Artsy. And we just sold one of his pictures yesterday. And then I started, my husband's company is Harlem Farms, and I started doing collaborations with Harlem Farms and artists, and we do logos and merchandising. And this was the first one with LaCrue. This is the second one with Mike. And here's some of the technology. If you guys put your phone up to this and you put it on the camera, it'll scan it and it'll actually take you to where I'm directing you to, which is the place to go buy all or go see all the different collections with all these different Harlem Farms. I also have that with, I meant to show you the artsy one a little bit earlier, but we'll get there in one sec. So here's another collaboration. Here's my street artist. This is Sinclair the Vandal. This is the artist named Duel. These are two different pieces. I just put them on the screen together. This is my new painting. This is Judith Weiner's piece. And we just did this artsy show last week. I'm very, very excited. And Carlos Pinto, he is a mosaic artist that does these fabulous MetroCard collages, mosaics. And here's actually me working on one of Carlos's pieces that he just did on the street. And he's been a big inspiration for me. I just had to throw that in there. There's my little mosaic art that I did this summer before I started working again, doing artsy and getting back into selling art. Okay, so that was kind of like a little bit about my history. So here's a picture from the last snowstorm of the gallery. And this Scan Me is also scannable. So the last time I took you over to Harlem Farms to see merchandise, but this scan here is to take you into the gallery. And this one will now take you to Artsy since the doors are closed. I figured I'd put up my Artsy website. So here's a few pictures inside my gallery. And these are just during some exhibitions. This is the downstairs gallery. I have 2 spaces. And I do events. So this is an event I did I think this event was like January 2020. And we did a preview of a movie, Cirque de Cambodia. And he's getting into festivals. And this was his first New York showing. I was excited to show it. We had this really fun dinner party, this nice long table. And then also right before COVID, I did a 3D gallery, and I wanted to put all my shows as 3D galleries, but ironically, you would think it would be the perfect timing, but they come in and shoot them. So since I wasn't showing them, I couldn't come shoot them to make them. But I am gonna jump out of this presentation for a second, and I am going to take you. Okay, let's start it over. Okay, so this is the 3D gallery that I'm just talking about. You can get this link through the website, and when I come and talk and do Q&A, we could talk more about it. But you could see this is my space, and if you click anywhere, it'll zoom you right into the space, and you could click around and you could see the different artworks that were on display. This is my gallery. This is the room I'm sitting in right now. This is what the wall I'm facing. And if we turn around, this is what I'm sitting behind right now. This is the same wall. This is the other part of the gallery. And then you could actually have fun with this, and you could go out of here and get into my lobby and then go down here and see what's in the hallway. And I did forget to mention, but if you click on any of these dots, it will tell you more about the piece. And if you want to learn more or purchase it, you could click learn more, and it will actually take you to the store. And you could get downstairs. Sometimes if you want to do it that way, you could also get around this way. And here I'm downstairs, and you guys are going to come in my office now. And you could see around my office. So this I used to show I still do. I just show other works other than what's in the exhibitions. You could actually see this piece right here is the one that's right behind me right now. When we go back, you'll see it. It's sitting in the gallery now. So anyway, I'll give you the link. You could zoom around. This is really fun. You could do it on your phone. That works as well. And the other thing I wanted to show you was over here while we're on the browser. This is the Artsy website. So this is my current show. And if you click on it, you could see all the pieces in the show, descriptions about it, and you could, you know, kind of just play around. But also from this front page, these are the different exhibitions that I have right now. I try and change them. Sorry, I try and add them weekly. I have so much work to put up that I just want to keep it, you know, keep filling it up so there's more exhibitions. This was the first one I put up. This is Visiting Mom by Salem. This is Seeing Red by Frank Fournier. And you could see, and if you click onto them, you could get through see the different shows and the different works. And it's a really great way to access art. And in fact, you could just search up here for any artist and it will get right to the artist. Sorry, I lost my N here. And it'll take you to, I was trying to get, I only have one of Harry. Maybe that wasn't the best example. Let's put Lynn Gilbert. I'm working on these really wonderful pictures with her right now. And this is, you could see, and you'll find all the different works by her. And you could even, like I said, you know, this site is by galleries, but it's kind of run, you kind of run it by the artist names or the style or what have you, but you can come in here and also type and, you know, and actually find a specific gallery if you knew who you were looking for. And so here's my gallery and the pieces that I have. And you'll start to see some of the ones I showed you in the presentation. Okay. I will let you guys have fun with that. That link, these links are all at my last screen. They'll come back. Okay. So here is, again, I put this one. So if anyone did want to try, I can't see you guys, but if anyone wanted to try and scan this, if you put your phone up to the screen right now and in your camera view, it would work also. And it'll take you over to the Artsy site that I was just showing you. Okay, so here, so now I've added pictures of photography and art and why this is such a beautiful picture or why not. I'm kind of open if you want perhaps to have a little discussion. I don't know, Judy, if anyone could raise their hand or knock if I would see it somehow, but I'm gonna just kind of go through a bunch of pictures now and talk about portraits and whatnot.
When we screen share, Lonnie, it's hard to see all the faces.
Okay, so just go through the pictures and then at the end people could ask questions. Okay, so remember your questions. Okay, so I think I put the photographs that I put first are the first two photographs are probably I probably almost everybody who's looking right now recognizes this photo, The Afghan Girl by Steve McCurry. Whoops. Or this picture of John Lennon by Bob Gruen. Here's another portrait of Lady Gaga by Martin Scholler. Kurt Cobain by Mark Seliger. This one's called Mama. It's a Woman in the Bronx by Ruben Natal San Miguel. Why is photography art and art is photography? These I think are some really, really the most powerful portraits. We could throw in an Irving Penn and a Richard Avedon. These are probably two of the greatest portrait photographers ever. And another style of portrait. This one's by Lynn Gilbert. Here's a picture of Alice Neal. Her painting is going to open, her painting retrospective is going to open this month at the Met. It's going to be really exciting. But this photograph Lynn took of Alice Neal, Lynn took in 1976, and only this past few months reprinted her contact sheets and was able to find her. And I, she's one of my clients, so we work together. I work with, help her edit, and we edited through and we found these really beautiful portraits, which we're trying now to put out there. So when they do the exhibition of Alice Neal, maybe they'll include some of Lynn's portraits. Here's more portraits. Here's Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. This picture of Keith Richards, I had mentioned that I was Keith's editor. This is one of my most favorite portraits of Keith, and there's thousands and millions of, these two are probably two of the most photographed people. But this picture on the left is one of my most favorite portraits of Keith. This is a portrait by a photojournalist. His name is Art Shea, and this is a picture of Muddy Waters. Really, really beautiful. And it's beautiful because of how beautifully he captured the light. Another portrait, it's by, I'm sorry, I forget the name of the photograph, but it's by Phyllis Galumbo, and she just did a new series of portraits. It's called Masks, and this is her style of work. She does these really amazing portraits all over the world and photographs indigenous people in their costume. She's an avid mask collector too. And she was my professor. This is a portrait, a very different style, which is why I included this one now. This is Michael Phelps in the Olympics. It might have been a practice before the Olympics or a qualifying race, but this is a portrait of him for the Olympics. Another portrait. These are all portraits. I think they're all works of art. This is those sports were all Dave Burnett, and actually Dave Burnett's show is going to open the end of this week on Artsy, so stay tuned. If you guys share your emails with me, I will invite you when I send that the next email. But this is a picture of Muhammad Ali by Ken Regan. Ken did a lot of sports and he did a lot of celebrity, but his work is very beautiful. Here's a bit of a funny take on things. This is Muhammad Ali and the Beatles. This is Burning Man. This is called Ken with Tea. Tea with Ken, and it's by Gabe Kirschenheimer. Again, another portrait. This picture was my most looked at Instagram post. Interesting.
Wow.
Okay. Now, besides portraits, there's all these other types of photography. Here, something kind of kitschy and funny by Dolly. This is a photograph of the old post office, which is now getting turned into the new Penn Station. Margaret Morton photographed. She was asked to go into the Farley building before they disassembled it all to rebuild it and take photographs. And sadly, Margaret died in April from the coronavirus. This is a photograph of the Twin Towers by Phil Traeger. Again, all these beautiful photographs as art. Many of these pictures are thousands of dollars. This photograph, if you look how straight the Twin Towers are, that's the beauty of Phil Traeger's work, is how actually precise. If we took this photo, they would be sort of a little obscure because of the angle and everything. But Phil uses an 8x10 camera, and he probably only took 3 or 4 pictures that day. This is a picture from the series Red. This was also on Artsy. It's Frank Fournier's picture. He used to use Kodachrome film, beautiful old slides. And this series is called Seeing Red. And the reds are amazing. As a printer, the reds, you can get reds like you could in Cibachrome, which is a type of medium of photography. Oh, Frank got another picture. This is Frank's also. Lenny Spire. This picture was taken out of an exhibition because it was deemed pornographic, but it's a statue in the Met. This is another beautiful photo. This is Arche's also. It's called Integration Rally in Chicago. And it's the Good Troublemakers. It's the John Lewis types fighting for social justice. And this was all happening in Chicago in the 60s. Okay, so then there's flowers, more beautiful, gorgeous photography is art. And of course, why is the flower in a vase so beautiful? This one's by Robert Mapplethorpe. This also is by Robert Mapplethorpe. He really, you know, took the most beautiful flower photographs. This photograph, I wish I could see everyone's expression. This is the most expensive, this is one of the most expensive photographs ever sold. It was $1 million. And it's through the blockchain. That's a whole nother discussion. It's digital art. And this is the actual most expensive photograph ever sold. It sold for almost $4 million. And it's Cindy Sherman. Cindy Sherman does portraits like they're almost all self-portraits. And I am back to my contact information. Again, I spelled archivist wrong, but other than that, this is the artsy website here in the middle. And I email, if you want to email me and send me your email address, I'd love to include you on my in my mailing. If you go to my website, ilonartgallery.com, it will actually, the first question, you could pop in your email if you want to do it that way also. And then I'll include you in my mailings. So.
What's the address of your studio?
The physical address or the website?
No, what's the street address of your studio?
I'm in Harlem. I'm on 123rd Street. The address is 204 West 123rd Street.
Thank you.
I'm hoping to reopen in the summer. When, you know, once most people are vaccinated, especially my husband and myself, if that all goes as planned. But I was granted a license by New York City. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen, there's lots of, I'm sure you have it out there. Like the restaurants all have like sidewalk cafes now, and even in the street where the cars park. So New York City gave me a license to actually open my gallery on the street. So if I could figure out how to build my outdoor structure and how to get it all set up, I'm trying to find a sponsor, then perhaps we'll be open a little bit sooner, you know, in the spring and outside, which would be fun. And I kind of was thinking if I'm going to do a outdoor street gallery, I would start with my street artists. Yeah.
I'm still reeling from a $4 million photograph.
I had to throw that in at the end.
What happens? I mean, how does the purchaser of a $4 million photograph assume that it remains unique?
Well, you know, like with all artists, you have to believe in the integrity of what the artist says and the estate says if they're not here anymore and how many are left. And you definitely, if you're going to pay $4 million for a photograph, pay good attention to that. Normally, when we say those Mapplethorpe flowers I showed you, those are like between 20 and maybe 18, but 20 and 50,000, which we all used to think was really expensive. And the Irving Penn, those portraits, and the Richard Avedons, those are like 50, 60,000 or more, maybe now even.
I didn't believe it.
I know, but the number of that Cindy Sherman and that virtual flower, 10 owners of a virtual flower for $1 million.
Oh.
Lonnie, is it appropriate to talk a little bit about blockchain or?
We can. That's probably told. Does anybody know? Okay, so blockchain so Bitcoin works on the blockchain and cryptocurrencies work on the blockchain. But last year, knowing just the way it works, but forget about cryptocurrency because I'm not talking about currencies at all. We wanted to put provenance and authenticity of artworks on the blockchain. And that way, like what Pat said, when Pat asked the question, like, how do you know that it's real? Well, by putting it on the blockchain and by authenticating and giving provenance and seeing the whole picture, it's one way that you could be much more assured that you bought something that, you know, will hopefully double in value still. You know, the David LaChapelle pictures that Amanda with the diamonds and a few others, those sell for the smaller ones for 20,000 and they sell better than most photographs. And when I first started working with David, they sold for 1,500. And the reason, even though it's such a high price, they still sell better is because they keep keeping their value. And even you'll buy it for 5 and now you could sell it for 20, you know? You know, even photographers are surprised on the prices these days of some of the things.
Loni, can I ask, how do you find the street graffiti artists?
I have I have 1 or 2 friends that were street artists and they invited me to their exhibitions. And when the street artists do shows, it's generally group shows with lots of street artists. And I was all excited and they introduced me to their friends. And that was sort of how I met. So I met LaCrue Eyebrows through one of these first street artists that I knew. And he's super motivated, super talented, and, you know, was really excited to kind of, like, I was taking artsy was new for me. Artsy was new for him. He had never done anything like that before. And actually, LaCrue is the one that is my best one on artsy right now. It's, I guess, because it's so different, I'm thinking. Carol, you're on mute.
Okay, I see all the big famous names. Do you represent people who are less known as well, or is it, I mean, how does somebody entering your gallery and become part of your archives or part of your stable or whatever you want to call it? Yeah.
You know, it depends on how I meet people. I started with the people that I have because I work with them professionally. I'm their archivist or their editor, or somehow I knew them in that way. When I was working with when I opened the gallery in 2014, my first photographer, I kind of met him to start helping work with him, and he wanted to do a show here in my house. So I did. And then I turned it into a gallery. And then once I had the gallery, people were like, I want to do a show. I want to do a show. And so a lot of it was like who I knew and then who would come and who I would see, and people send me stuff, and it's very organic. There's not really any rules to how I go forward.
They're not all famous, big and famous.
Oh no, I work with I work with emerging photographers all the way to super famous. The super famous, I mean, it depends. Like Dave Burnett isn't super famous. He should be super famous. But he's also, you've probably seen his photographs for the past 50 years and don't even know it. He's photographed every president. He's photographed the Olympics. He's photographed all the big news stories, like the big ones, not the small ones. So, and then also I work with totally emerging photographers. Just, it caught my eye, or I like them, or who knows, you know.
Were you familiar with Rayanne Rubinstein?
I'm not.
No, she just passed away. I knew her many years ago. She was a photographer to like Andy Warhol and all his crew. And it turned out over the years, you know, she died in Nashville, actually, you know, all the big names in music. So I was just curious, yeah.
You know, I kind of specialize in music photography. I mean, if I had to choose something I specialized in,
Yeah.
It's probably because I worked with Keith Richards for so many
Yeah,
years.
that's what made me think of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the people, of course, that photographed Keith were all the famous rock and roll photographers. So I met so many photographers that way.
Mhm.
Another way that I met photographers.
Lonnie, are the people who collect photography, do they collect photography solely, or is it part of a larger collection? What I mean is, are there people who collect just different photographers?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's people that when they collect art, all they collect is photography.
Mhm.
There's people that have certain kinds of collections, like hands or something like that. But then children, but then there's definitely people. I mean, if you look behind me, like I have paintings and digital art and photography. And I think people who collect photography kind of collect art in general.
Yeah.
Photography, I think, is a little more attainable for some because the price is usually a little bit lower because it's not unique pieces.
Yeah.
Although that's not true anymore. Like, this $4 million Cindy Sherman certainly isn't really affordable.
Yeah.
Where did you get your training? Where did you go to school? And what were you majoring in that led you to what you do?
I think I got most of my training on the job, but I went to SUNY Albany and I wanted to go to photography school, but we didn't really have a great photography school there. So I went to business school because we had a really good business school there, and I did photography too. And then when I came to New York, as soon as I graduated college, I really wanted to live in New York City and work in photography somehow. I just didn't know how. And then when I started, like I said, I printed for Annie. And then I got to work in her archives. So when I worked in her archives, I worked with a consultant actually who became one of my huge mentors. Actually, I mean, Annie, her printer, and Mark Boyer are three of my mentors for my career, because Jim taught me how to print like extra better. And Mark Boyer helped me learn how to program and make those databases and kind of got me started with that. And then Annie, of course, like for the next 10 years after I set up Annie's archives, I would go see any other client, and I had David LaChapelle and Joel Meyerowitz and all these other superstars on my list at this point. And they were like, "Oh, you worked with Annie? Oh, you could do my archives."
How did you meet Annie, Lonnie?
Well, I did one job before I worked at Annie's because I thought I might meet I just got to New York and I needed to find an apartment, and then so I had to have a job. And at that job, I knew I would meet the right people. And Annie was one of our customers there. I was a manager of Spectra Photo Digital, which is a pre-press shop. I'm old enough that people didn't have modems yet, that you would come over to us and we'd send it. And if you needed a color copy, we'd make it for you. And, but we also did photography, and we had a lot of printing services and whatnot. And I was the manager of the store, and Annie was one of our customers. And I took really, really, really good care of her because, she was kind of my ultimate goal to get out of this place, was to go there, which worked out. But I didn't really ever think I was going to start my career as a black and white printer, but I did, and it was awesome. And, I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that and for her, and then to work with Jim. Jim is probably one of the most important people ever to me, because he's like probably one of the best photography printers ever. And I got to work with him for 6 weeks practicing on Annie's negatives. It was cool. And actually Jim came over like a month ago, and he bought one of those LaCroix pictures, just as a 30 something year continuation of me and Jim Agargi.
Mary?
Unmute.
Yeah.
Was there ever a question about whether photography was art?
Oh yeah, and I think less now,
Yeah.
but absolutely. Like back, I was doing that with Mark in 2000 when we were 2001, 2002, when we were trying to change him from being a commercial photographer to be a fine art photographer. And people still say like, and around him is a big question because he's a very, very successful commercial photographer, but he's not a very successful fine art photographer at all. But honestly, I think his pictures are exceptional, and that's kind of interesting, maybe because he's so commercial. I'm trying to think. Here, this way, I have it right here. This is a Mark Zellweger picture. He was practicing. He was practicing his platinum work. Oh, I think there's too much glare. But anyway, so this is like a Mark Zellweger. This isn't commercial at all, you know? But yeah, people definitely like why? You could just print it again. I could take that same picture, like those flowers. I mean, those flowers I showed you were pretty exceptional, but some other pictures, people are like, say Nan Golden. I don't know if you guys know her work. Hers are kind of gritty, New York, snapshotty. Like, why couldn't those be my pictures at a party? You know?
We could.
They could.
Lonnie, and Mary, when printmaking first started, there was a question about that too. And, whether there were, what was an original, if prints were worthwhile, if they were worth anything, if it was what type of print, and when photographs came out back in the day, when photography first started being marketed as quote unquote art, they used to make additions and then they used to put a hole through the negative so no more could be printed. And, my information, Lonnie is the one who's, current with all of this, but, the same discussions were true of prints and offset prints and reproductive prints. And sometimes there were like posters that were numbered and editioned, and there was a law governing printmaking, and the same applied to photography of art. But I'm sure it's changed radically with the digital platforms. But it used to be that, it wasn't, there were real questions of what was art like back in the 70s.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I still think it continues. What about Richard Prince? He takes images from other photographers from Instagram and makes that his art and sells them for like $100,000 in like
Incredible.
limited editions, very large pieces. But he really, the art wasn't like, he kind of just captured it, he didn't even manipulate it too much. Like, at least people say you have to manipulate it and somehow make it your own. There was actually a really big court case going on, and Andy Warhol used a portrait of Mick Jagger by I think it's Mick Jagger by Lynn Goldsmith, and then the foundation went and sued her. So she doesn't have rights to do it to her. They took her photograph. He took the photograph and they initiated the lawsuit, which is the craziest thing ever. And she thinks they took her art and they're suing her,
Wow.
And she's not winning. And she's spending a lot of money on it.
She doesn't have enough money to fight that.
I know. She really doesn't, because she fundraises and,
Lonnie, I guess photography is being manipulated more and more now, and it's all part of computer art almost. How do you look upon that? So it's not based on the snapshot, the shot taken with the camera. There's a lot of computer work done on that. What is your feeling about that?
Oh, I don't have every artist is their art, like no one tells you how to paint or whatever. It's the way you interpret things and you paint it. So I feel like if like David LaChapelle wants to add an airplane into his scene that wasn't really there, like that makes sense. He does that. This one behind me is a whole bunch of different photographs together. And then there's those realists like Dave Burnett that wouldn't touch a thing in his photograph because he's a photojournalist by trade, and he would like never be allowed to publish his work again if he did that. And I think all of it's okay. I think it's really up to the artist who creates the work. It's their work that they're putting out there.
Lonnie,
Can I, there are so many things I want to ask you, but let me start with this. What do you think of the case of Vivian Meyer? The woman who was this, whose work was discussed, you know.
I know who she is. I think her work is amazing. But what's the question? What's the question you're asking?
Well, her case is it still tangled up in court?
No, I'm actually not sure where that one is in the courts. But I mean, her work is really, really beautiful. And like when somebody new undiscovered, they're like the new Vivian Meyer, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, her work is exceptional. It's like, why is her how is photography art? Like look at her stuff, you know? Like she was a
Discovered
wonderful artist
in a trunk somewhere.
Yeah, she was a nanny and she was shy and, you know, not well off.
Yeah, incredible. May I ask you a slightly different subject? I know most of the work that you showed is contemporary or not, doesn't go back that far. What about the work, valuation wise, of somebody like August Sander, the German portrait photographer, gosh, what, 150 years ago? Is that very highly valued as compared to, say, a Cindy Sherman?
No, not compared to a Cindy Sherman.
That's crazy.
But you picked the top.
Yeah.
It's weird. You know, it's really some things you would think should cost more and they don't. And some things cost less than you would think they should cost more. What's his name? Curtis, you know, the one who does the American Indians? I'm forgetting his last name.
Sure. Edward Curtis?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know who you mean.
His pictures, you could get one of his for like less than 2,000.
Wow.
And you would think, why? You know?
That's shocking. Yeah.
I'd rather have that than a Cindy Sherman, but I mean, aesthetically.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously not financially if I was given, but.
Now, may I ask, I'm sure other people, well, let me just squeeze this one in. Somebody like Winston Link, who was very successful commercial photographer, and then decided he wanted to go off and photograph the old steam railways before they disappear. And I think had a pretty successful career as a fine art photographer. He managed to make the
transition.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's some like say Joel Meyerowitz, who was always a fine art photographer, you know, and he's another one, like, why were his art back in the day? But when you re-look at his pictures today, I think you appreciate them more, at least I do, than I did back then. You know, his were a little just like everyday portraits. What Joel did for photography is kind of make color photography an acceptable fine art.
Yeah.
I think that's his biggest contribution.
Loni, the 3D images that you can rotate and travel through, do you publish them anywhere, or is that's from the time when the gallery is open? It's kind of an interesting way to look at other photographs.
Well, I was hoping, that was my last show I had before Corona. That show opened in January 2020. And Richard was my next show coming. Richard's the photographer who made that whole thing into 3D. So the software is kind of at a funny state. It's like in court, so they can't progress the software further. So it's kind of at this weird state. But anyway, Richard, because it's in this weird state, he could photograph shows, but he can't. Technically, we should be able to drop different pictures into that software and change the show without actually physically having a show.
Right.
But because of the technology in courts, and because he's a photographer, not a technician, the way we were going to do it was photograph each show, because he could turn each show into one of those things through the photographs, but not through the digital manipulation. But since there's no more shows and the gallery's closed and he moved to Oregon and I don't have anything new on the walls, that sort of all like blew up, and Arche was the only one we managed to do. But hopefully we'll do that again. And he's hopefully coming back to New York. You know, it was just too expensive to be a working artist not working in New York City.
So,
Ronnie,
so you're not currently using those 3D images anywhere except to show it to a group like this?
Well, that's on my website. That's live. You can go visit that anytime you want. So I'll always use it if you want to see my art show. I do a lot with technology. I kind of like to show that off sometimes for technology reasons. So it's there and it works, and everything about it works. We just haven't been able, like, ideally you should been able to have a link you could choose a different show and check out another show. And so we're just sort of still on show 1.
Okay, because I'm very taken with the fact that you can focus in on the little blue spot and get all the data about the piece that you're looking at. I think that's just
that's great.
fabulous.
Yeah. So in my office, the only reason there's only like 10 dots instead of every piece is because we just didn't get, like, we have to set it up. We have to, like, I had to send him the information. He has to tag it and connect it. And, we did 10. I honestly forgot I never did more, but
I have a question.
There's
When I saw,
oops,
whoops,
Miriam. And then I'm not sure who was talking next, Saul, I think.
it's Adrian.
yeah.
When I saw the, where all of the boxes of their work, and you walk into that room, and I would go, holy mackerel, where do you start? Do you have to look into every one of those boxes? And
No, you don't have to look into any of the boxes. That's the beauty of it. So, okay, the Keith one had those glaring labels. That's because the people in charge don't want to have anything to do with the computer. But the more you do with the computer, the less you have to label the boxes. So all of that information is in a computer. So you would say, Keith Richards photographed by Paul Natkin, and it would say box 10, box 12, and box 15. And then you'd go over there and find those 3 boxes and see. Or if you even just said, the Beggars to Babylon tour, it would tell you exactly which box, and that's how it is for all of those archives. Pamela Anderson over in David LaChapelle's, it'll tell you the box the work prints are in, it'll tell you the box the prints are in, it'll tell you the box the negatives are in. But if you specifically search for Pamela Anderson negatives, then you'll get that,
I was going to say I've been taking some classes at the New York online classes at the New York Academy of Art, and there's a current show that's in that format. I don't know.
Oh, cool.
But yes, it's kind of it's on diversity. It's artists who are Native American or Black or sort of marginal type artists. So it's up there now, and it does that same thing. And I have to say, you have to keep your wits about you, because you get lost in. There's so much to see. There are 60 pieces in that show, and you get lost in all of that stuff, just wandering around the room.
Yeah, I think Art Shea has about that many also, that show. I didn't click on any of the dots in the main gallery. I only clicked down the hall, and then there's in my office, and I think I took out my bathroom. There's a few different technology companies that do it. I think there's about 3 that I know of that has that kind of technology, and one of them is suing the one that Richard uses.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the one that they use.
Yeah, I don't even remember the name of the one Richard uses. I should know it. But
Yeah.
It's because he does that. I just, I open my doors and let him in.
Well, what I was interested in is that, as you know, some of these online experiences are better than the on-site experience. And certainly taking this class at New York Academy of Art, I would never be able to take a class like that. But I'm getting the quality type of faculty that they have. And so there are exhibits that I might not be able to take in that I would be able to take it in. So, but it takes a little bit of fussing and to figure out how you can appreciate. Certainly is certainly better than just doing a slideshow. There's no question it's better than that.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting how this whole online, by me having my artsy gallery online, all of you guys now could go see my shows. You could see all of my shows, my old shows and my current shows, and you could do it now or later, or next week and it's just
Yeah.
there, you know?
Yes. No, that's
Right,
that's a good reminder.
Miriam?
That's a good re-
When, if you were to start working with an artist to archive their work, what state would you expect to find their pictures and their negatives in?
All states. All states. Some terribly unorganized to super organized is just some holes in the system that it's frustrating because those people are so organized they want to iron those holes out. But it really all types. I'll help with workflow. I won't reinvent the wheel if you don't need it to be reinvented or invented in the first place. I'll just help you fix up what's not working right. But if you don't really have a solution or a system, I could go there too. Honestly, most of the time it's a place to put stuff to, like where once you start organizing, where digitally you're going to put all the stuff, you know? And there's lots of answers to that as well. But that's kind of the first hurdle, and that kind of makes people just stop.
Well, I can tell you as a recipient of one of her databases, and I have a simplified version because I didn't need anything complicated. It's not very difficult to use. It's really simple. Once the infrastructure is set up, and I just take pictures of my work and dump it into the database, and then I can manipulate and organize and add information, take it away, whatever.
I used it for the gallery as well. I have a different version. And like when I do an artsy show, I'll tag all the pictures. Like I have 100 pictures a day per net, and I'm not sure how big the show is, but it could be up to 50. But the ones that are on artsy on my database will say they're on artsy. And there'll be a document that shows me that they're all there together on artsy. And if I wanted to present it to him, I could do it as a contact sheet or as, like I showed you, the one big picture on the page. So it lets you organize this stuff internally and then distribute it to people the way you want to. Like I could send JPEGs or a PDF, but as a photographer, you only want to send the files if they need the files. Otherwise, you want to send them a picture, a PDF.
Mary?
I'm wondering, are there trends in photography, subjects that become popular and then fade, and older things that become, I'm just thinking, is there going to be a COVID surge in photography after this? I'm sure there'll be very poignant pictures, but do the subjects kind of go in and out of favor?
Oh, for sure. It follows the trends of what's going on in the world. Like if a celebrity is famous, then you want their photos. Like I doubt people want a picture of Bill Cosby anymore. But I bet you, 25 years ago, they did.
Well, they had O.J. Simpson. You showed O.J. Simpson.
Well, that was already at his fault because that was his trial. But exactly. I really love that photo because he's looking right at Annie, taking those pictures of him in the courtroom. I took a stack. I swear, I printed a stack of 8x10s this big overnight, like 2 nights, and that is really one of my favorite photos.
Carol?
Yeah, I have to leave and I want to thank you. It was wonderful. But before I do you do your own photographs also? Do you are you a photographer as well?
I do. I don't really do it professionally, but I've done a few things. Like my friend has a record label and I ended up doing like 2 album covers and pictures inside. And another friend did this really cool thing, swam around Manhattan, and I took pictures and then I got them published but that was all because of them. I don't really do it professionally, but once in a while I've gotten some stuff, but mostly I take pictures of my kids and my mom and things like that.
You have good models. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Okay. I look forward to visiting in person.
Oh, great. And I'll let you definitely sign up, send me your email, but I'll let you guys know.
What is your email?
Great.
My email is le@ilon.com.
All right, because I just sent something. I didn't know if I sent it to the right one.
Okay, I haven't looked yet because I'm here, but maybe Judy, you could send a screenshot of that last page with all the information.
Okay, Lonnie, you want to put that last page?
Oh, sure, I'll put it
Yes,
back
put
on the
page
screen.
Up again.
Okay.
And everybody, thank you.
And Judy, a special thank you for Lonnie.
Well, now I'll confess, everybody,
Uh-huh.
Lonnie's my daughter.
I was trying hard not to call her
Oh, you kept
mom.
calling her Judy.
She doesn't call me Judy usually.
I know, I had a feeling. That's
I
a great
worked really
picture
hard
of
at
you,
that.
Lonnie. Yeah, Lonnie, that's a great picture of you.